Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some ProRevenge archives. Our first story today comes to us from Jack Crow. My ex-wife learned the hard way to not ignore a court summons. Let's jump right in. Not sure if this is petty or pro, but because the ultimate outcome was settled in front of two different judges, I'm putting it here in ProRevenge. Fair warning, it's a bit long, but worth it in my eyes. A bit of background. I was married to a woman for 15 years and ended up divorcing her because she liked to sleep with other guys. While it took me 6 years to stumble onto this fact, she worked from home, I commuted 2 hours each way into the city. I owe it to her being either a sociopath or a narcissist, or both, why not? She could absolutely turn on and off the charm and could come up with lies staring you right in the eyes. Hindsight is 2020. Let's call her V, short for Voldemort, as one time when I was talking about her after the separation, I referred to her as she who must not be named, and the nickname stuck with all my friends and family. During the marriage, my ex and I were best friends with another couple, and for this post, we'll call them Sam and Marie. Sam was, still is, my best friend. Marie was V's best friend. Marie had found out about V's plans to cheat on me prior to me finding out and told V that she couldn't condone infidelity and their friendship would end if V did cheat on me. No, Marie did not tell me, and I don't blame her for not doing so. When I finally found out V was having a Facebook affair, if you're going to have an online affair, don't do it while married to a computer expert with some dude in California. We lived in Massachusetts. It was just 2 weeks before V was flying him out and putting him up in a hotel for 3 days. I spent those 2 weeks getting a lawyer, a private eye, and my exit strategy together. I left her the weekend after their hotel stay. She would spend the days with him and come home for the afternoon evening without a shred of guilt showing in her actions. The PI haven't gotten pics and video of them leaving the hotel and eating lunch together and heading back to the hotel. I first stayed at Sam and Marie's in their in-law basement apartment, eventually moving to a small apartment back in the town where V lived. Fast forward 9 months, and I'm divorced from V. Why it was so short to divorce is another tale worthy of this subreddit. We had one daughter, let's call her Rebecca. She was 13 at the time. Between us, still at home, and we're trying shared custody and live about a quarter mile apart. There are other kids from the marriage, but they were living apart from us at that time, and don't play a part in this part of the whole story. We had acquired a lake house during the marriage and had it listed to sell, and we had it written into the divorce agreement to split the proceeds, but paying half the mortgage on that and the rent on my apartment was really stretching me thin financially. One day, Marie emails me, subject line in all caps, V just tried to get me fired. Long story short, V emailed Marie's boss claiming that Marie was gossiping about V on sales calls to customers, but her boss knew it was BS and told V as much. Wisely, Marie didn't mess around waiting to see what was next. She went to the local courthouse that day and filed for an anti-harassment order against V. It took several visits to the judge as V chose to ignore multiple summons to court so that the judge could hear her side of the story. Eventually, the judge granted the order because V never showed up to court. During this time, V called 911 on me multiple times, one time claiming I put a letter bomb in her mailbox, and 2 other times I had entered her apartment without her permission. The letter bomb accusation was due to me posting a link to shipyourенemiesglitter.com on Facebook months before and subsequently mailing her a thick bundle of forms to sign. Police were called and I had to go to V's apartment and open the letter in front of the police. Needless to say, there was no glitter, let alone a bomb. Oddly enough, this accusation came just days after there had been an actual bomb threat called into the town hall. Funny that. The 2 times I had gone into her apartment had both been to drop off Rebecca's book bag when she had forgotten it at my apartment. Both times I had texts from V granting me permission to open the door and put the book bag just inside. She would then text me after I had done so, trying to revoke the permission. To this day, I think V thinks that if she deletes a message on her end, the message is deleted on my end. Even though kids will be kids, and Rebecca did forget her book bag at my place on at least one other subsequent occasion, I did not fall for V's ruse a 3rd time. All forgotten book bags were delivered by Rebecca and I meeting halfway between the apartments. Also included with the multiple 911 calls were multiple minor child wellness checks on evenings when I had Rebecca at my apartment. It's so much fun having to explain to your child why the police are showing up at 8 o'clock at night to check to see if she's okay. Basically, V was trying to get me frustrated and react badly. Throughout this whole mess, Sam and Marie have been lifesavers to me and Rebecca, hosting and cooking weekly family dinners for us. They are Rebecca's godparents, and just being absolute rock steady in their support and tolerance of the situation. Around this time, V filed for sole custody. At the strong urging of my lawyer, I insisted on a guardian ad litem, GAL, being appointed to represent Rebecca's best interests, her being a minor child. Of course, the parents must pay the fees of the GAL. At this point, my finances are really getting worrisome, so I write an email to V saying we need to drop the price of the lake house and get that sold regardless of profit. I needed that albatross off from around my neck so I could continue to afford to live where I could co-parent Rebecca as well as fight the custody battle. So there I am, going deeper into debt, can't pay rent and mortgage long term, and V is starting another court battle for full custody. With no other choice, I move back in with Sam and Marie so I can continue to pay my lawyer and keep fighting. About a week after I'm settled back in with Sam and Marie, I hear from Rebecca that V's glass patio table was smashed the previous night. I was in New Hampshire that evening with a witness, so it couldn't have been me. I was paying for Rebecca's cell phone, and we have Life 360, so we could know where each other was at any time, due to an earlier threat by V to take the two youngest kids and move to California to be with the idiot from Facebook. Plus, it had history, so I could at least prove my phone was in New Hampshire. Rebecca says she knows I was in New Hampshire and tells me she'll tell her mother it wasn't me. The next day, I was served with a restraining order claiming that I had vandalized V's patio furniture and that she still felt afraid due to the letter bomb incident. The cops knew it was BS, but the judge had no knowledge of the incident when V filed the restraining order and had to take her at her word. The restraining order was for 10 days, and then I could show up in court and contest it being continued. The officer who served the restraining order explained that he had to confiscate any firearms and licenses. While I did have a recently acquired Class A concealed carry license, actually from a couple's firearms course that was an anniversary gift from V the previous year, I hadn't any firearms other than a BB Pew Pew of Rebecca's. The officer left with just the Class A license, smiling as he said he was pretty sure I wasn't going to go on a rampage with a BB Pew Pew. The first thing I did the next day was go to the police station and request all incident reports that involved me since I left her. I knew of 7 incidents, but the desk sergeant informed me they had 19 incident reports from V. He talked to me a bit, clearly trying to get a feel for what kind of person I was and just what was going on. We parted company with him assuring me that the patrol officers would now know what was going on, and the PD would do right by me so long as I kept my cool. Fair enough. 2 nights before court appearance to contest the restraining order, Sam, Marie, and I are sitting on their porch, drinking some beer and brainstorming about what I'm going to say to the judge. I'm a bit discouraged because I know it's going to be a he said, she said situation, and I'm living in Massachusetts. If your chromosomes don't match, you are a second-class citizen when it comes to parental rights in MA. Plus, V deserves an Oscar for how well she plays the victim. It wasn't looking good. My only hope was if V decided the restraining order itself was enough to make me look bad to the gal and not show up and let the restraining order expire. Marie suddenly said, "Hey, let me see the restraining order." I handed it over to her. "Hey, this is my judge. She's the judge that granted me the anti-harassment order against V." You're kidding. Sam and I looked at each other in amazement. "I swear it is. Let me go get it." Marie goes inside and comes back a few minutes later with her court order. Sure enough, it's the same judge. My grin felt like it was going to split my lips. Now I knew exactly what to do. Now for the meat of the story. The court date to contest the restraining order arrived, and I'm there first thing, just me. No lawyer, because he had to appear in court elsewhere. I strongly hoped that V wouldn't show up, but she did, with someone other than her divorce lawyer, and before court was in session, her new lawyer approached me and offered to let the no contact order lapse, but wanted a do not abuse order left in place. I politely declined her offer, stating I had done nothing to warrant either order, and that I wanted the judge to hear my argument. V's lawyer was taken aback by this a bit, and then shrugged as if to say, "It's your funeral," and walked back to where V was sitting. We went in front of the judge and V told her side of the story, and I started telling mine, introducing all the incident reports from the police department. But V and her lawyer didn't have copies of all of them, so the judge sent us back to the gallery to await second call while V and her lawyer reviewed the reports. When we were called back, the judge started to go into the content of the police reports, and I stated that the content was almost irrelevant, but she insisted on going through them. During that, V emphasized the 2 incidents where I briefly entered V's apartment with her permission, but she characterized them as me doing so without her permission. I said that if necessary, I would be able to provide the communications where she gave me permission, but I didn't have them with me today. When going through the first police report from the night I found out about the online affair, wherein V claimed I had brain lesions, V also tried to characterize me as having multiple personality disorder as told to her by our shared primary care physician. The judge asked her with little incredulity, "His doctor told you this without his permission?" "Yes, Your Honor." The judge looked at me, puzzled. I shrugged and said while slowly shaking my head in disbelief, "I have a very close relationship with my doctor, and I highly doubt he would violate HIPAA." She looked a little nonplussed, but I think she got the message that V wasn't being entirely truthful. As that was the last police report to go, I reminded her that my point wasn't the content, but that I thought V was using the courts to harass and intimidate me, and to make me look bad to the gal. And I brought up that this isn't out of character for V, as she has an anti-harassment order in place against her, put there by Your Honor, Your Honor. The judge blinked at that bit of info. I gave her the details and reminded her that V declined to show up at the multiple hearings. As I recounted the particulars of Marie's story, the judge squinted her eyes more and more, and her frown got deeper and deeper. She turned to V, and her voice was slow, cold fury. "Do you have an anti-harassment order in place against you?" V's voice was so small and weak. "Yes, Your Honor." I so wanted to look at V's face to see her reaction, but I kept my eyes locked on the judge. The judge pointed at V. "Why didn't you show up to the hearings?" A pause as V struggled to find some excuse. "Because I didn't want to associate with that," but the judge waved her to silence. I think that was the turning point, as I think she was going to grant their request for the do not abuse, but she turned to me and said sternly, "I think there is a bit of this going on both sides, but clearly she wants you to stay out of her apartment." "Never again, Your Honor." Restraining order terminated, and with a bang of her gavel, we were done. Because the restraining order was terminated, legally, that meant it never happened. I got my Class A concealed carry license back the next day and ultimately won the custody battle, a large part of which was the termination of the restraining order, but also due to V's subsequent increasingly poor emotional and verbal treatment of Rebecca. Well, it sounds like OP finally has some things going in their favor. Now, they did post an update to the story. It's called "Ex-Wife Tries to Frame Me for Theft, She Fails." So let's jump right in. I'll admit that this doesn't quite rise to ProRevenge levels, but it is an addition to my previous post as requested in the comments. Background: at this point in the saga, having lost the custody battle, V is moving to New Hampshire to be with her then primary lover, now husband number 5. A detail that amuses me to this day is that he shares the same first name as the Facebook lover from California, as mentioned in my first post. I always refer to them as Paul number 1 and Paul number 2 when talking about them. Yes, I'm easily amused. The incident. About a month after the custody hearing at which I got full physical custody of Rebecca, V and I had an email exchange in which we agreed that I would go to her apartment and take Rebecca's captain's bed and some of Rebecca's belongings the day before movers arrived to pack up Voldemort's stuff. She was moving 75 miles away to central New Hampshire, having burned pretty much every bridge in the area. As Sam drives a truck, he graciously agreed to come along to both help and to be a witness. So we get there around 7:20 p.m. and knock at the door. After a brief wait, V opens the door, iPhone glued to her ear. She sullenly mumbles something about her stuff is upstairs, and then heads off to her second floor bedroom, weaving and mumbling something that made me stop and think. I didn't quite get it, but I recall thinking, I really cannot go in here at all without a witness. I stick my head out the door. "Sam, come on, you need to come in with me." So we go in. Holy crap, it's a tip. It's not quite filthy, but it's beyond cluttered. By now, V has disappeared into her room, complete with slamming the door, so it takes me a bit of wandering to find Rebecca's room. It's not just that she's in the middle of packing, but there is crap everywhere. Dust, cobwebs, tracked-in dirt, unwashed dishes, empty boxes of wine, dry dog food scattered and trampled underfoot. I could see that it's quite a nice place, an open living area with a balcony overlooking it, and lovely woodwork and exposed beams and inset shelves in the walls. An antique wood stove on a hearth is blazing away. Really, lots of potential, but a tip nonetheless. So Sam and I start gathering up Rebecca's stuff and take some stuff out to the car. I realize we need an Allen wrench to take apart the bed, so I go out to the car to get one and come back in. In the lull in activity, she had come back into the living area, but went right back into her bedroom as we climbed the stairs, phone still glued to her ear. It takes a bit, but we finally get the bed taken apart and have moved most of the stuff in Rebecca's room out to the front lawn. Without conferring, it's clear Sam and I both decided to get the stuff to the front lawn and worry about packing the vehicles after we're completely out of the house. It's at this point that it starts to get weird. Sam is carrying out the second to last load when V pops out of her bedroom door, looks out from the balcony and says, "Why are you taking stuff out of my house?" Sam drops what he's carrying and exits the house. He knew what was up instantly. I come out of Rebecca's room, and V clearly didn't realize I was still there, and say, "You agreed via email that we would take Rebecca's bed tonight." She looked startled and said, "Is that Rebecca's stuff?" "Of course it is. You said her stuff was in her room." "Fine." She goes back into her bedroom. I take what I'm carrying and go outside. Sam says, "Dude, that's not right. We need to call the police." "You're absolutely right." I could tell that Sam was expecting me to object, and he does a double take when he realized he wasn't going to have to convince me. "Crowsville Police Department, you're on a recorded line." "Yes, hi. My name is Jack Crow, and I live at 321 Main Street here in Crowsville." While I'm talking to the police on the phone, I'm aware of V coming to the door and opening it, and becoming quite agitated as she realizes I'm talking to the police. By the time I finish the following explanation, she has slammed the door and is tromping around inside the living area, heatedly talking on her phone. I'm at my ex-wife's apartment getting some of my daughter's belongings, as we had agreed to via email, and while I'm getting the last of the stuff out of the house, she suddenly asks, "Why are you taking stuff out of my house?" So in order to protect all parties, I'm asking that a police officer come by to verify with Mrs. Crow that she agreed to this and that she is fine with what we have removed from the house. "An officer will be right there, Mr. Crow." As I'm waiting for the officer to arrive, leaning nonchalantly against the front of Sam's truck, Sam is standing there next to me, just shaking his head. I'm gonna call Marie and let her know what's going on. Right about here, V throws open the front door, muttering something about having not gotten all of Rebecca's stuff, and proceeds to deposit another laundry basket piled high with clothes and other items on the front stoop, and then disappears back inside. I start to whistle, pop goes the weasel. Most of the stuff we moved is still sitting on the front lawn. We leave it there. After about 5 minutes, the officer arrives. He steps out of the patrol SUV and I slowly approach him, arm extended to shake his hand. "Good evening, officer. I'm Jack Crow." "Evening, Mr. Crow. Allie Johnson." We shake hands, I give him a brief explanation of the situation, and he comments that I was right to call him and that he'll go speak to V. He's up there for about 2 minutes and then he comes back down. "You guys are good to go." We briefly chat with him, apologizing for having to get him involved, and he replies, "No, you did the right thing. If a woman in Massachusetts says something bad about you and you've got stuff dangling between your legs, then you're going to be in trouble." I liked him a lot after that. We start loading the rest of the stuff and he asks, "How much more is in the house?" "Nothing, it's all out here, except that last laundry basket on the stoop that Miss Crow brought out while we were waiting for you." "Oh good, I can't sit here all night. If you guys are good to go, I'll take off." "Wait, what's that?" "What's what?" "I think I saw a phone in that basket." He shines his flashlight on the laundry basket on the front stoop. I walk up to that basket and an iPhone is sitting on the top of it. I pick it up and it looks like Rebecca's old iPhone 4. "It's my daughter's old phone, I'll just take it with us." I carry the basket down to my car and put it in the back seat. Just as I'm walking away, it rings. Incoming call from V's landline. I realize it's V's phone. I pick it up and answer it. "Hello?" Click, I look at the front. There's a text from Paul number 2 on the lock screen. "Is he gone yet?" "Yep, it's her phone." "Wait, officer, I was wrong. It's Miss Crow's phone. Could you return it to her?" He takes it from me and returns it to V at the front door and walks back down to us. "Okay, you're still good to go. I'm going to go now. If you could, swing by again in 15 to 20 minutes. If we're still here, you might want to pull in and make sure we're still okay." "Sounds good. You two take care." Not 5 minutes after he pulls out, and while we're still loading stuff, V again pops out the front door, phone glued to her ear. "Is the officer still here?" "No." "Get him back." "Why?" "I want him back. Get him." And back inside she goes. I'm briefly tempted to tell her, if you want the cop back, you call for him, but that little voice in my head says, you call. So I redial Crowville's finest and request that Officer Johnson return to the address. Again, Sam and I assume our waiting positions at the front of the truck. This is why I didn't want Rebecca here tonight. Good call. A few minutes later, Officer Johnson arrives. Hey, Officer Johnson, long time no see. He grins at me. She just came out the front door just after you left, asking for the police to be called. I'll go see what she wants. He goes up there and V hands him her phone. He talks for a few minutes, hangs up the phone, continues speaking with V for 20 more seconds, and then returns to us. I look at him quizzically. No worries, guys, you're still good to go, but I'm going to stay here until you're done. I continue to give him the raised eyebrow. She wanted to accuse you of trying to steal her phone, but I pointed out to her that I was the one to notice it in the basket you hadn't touched yet, and that you were the one to ask me to return it to her. Her boyfriend asked if you could be made to wait until Sunday, but I told him no, they've got 3 more things to load and they're out of here. Just finish up, guys. We all want to go home where it's warm. We finished up and we all shook hands and got out of there. One thing I want to comment on in the first place is that I hope that Sam and Marie have been told on a regular basis what amazing friends they are, because they've gone through all of this with OP and helped him out hugely. Can you imagine how this would have gone down though if the phone hadn't been noticed and ended up inside Sam's truck? I am going to do a search for more stories on this though, because OP said that while life has moved on and there's very little opportunity for new material between them, there was plenty of material from the past. Check out OP at the links in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.